What's up, guys? We are still in the process of getting the studio put together, getting the background all changed up here in the office. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're on YouTube, you can see the background. It's kind of plain. If you listen to the audio podcast, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if you can, and follow us on Spotify if that's where you prefer to listen to your podcast. We just like to have any reviews that we can get to get us, out to more and more people to hear this show. So listen, today we're diving into the skating world. We got a professional skateboarder joining the podcast. He's got an amazing story. I mean, we're talking about cultural transitions going from country to country, what skating was like in a different country compared to the United States, the struggles, the ups and downs that he went through in his career, what he learned during a prison sentence when he was there, the different things he's learned, life lessons, his favorite places to skate, the different things he's doing now to help other people who've struggled with similar things as him, his nutrition, the way he takes care of his body. We're dissecting it all. It doesn't matter if you're a skater, but if you are, you're really, really going to love this. But everybody can benefit from this episode, so don't miss it. This is the Game Time Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time! Woo!
This is the Game Time Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome out to another episode of the Game Time Guru podcast. My name is Shane Larson, host of the show. Thank you guys for tuning in for another one. I want to remind all y'all, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, I appreciate that. I understand we're in the course of remodeling the back so I can get some stuff in the background. It's not so plain. We're redoing the office, which is also my studio. That being said, YouTube is one of those platforms I'm trying to build out. As you guys know, we've hit 180 countries. All 50 states have listened to the show at some point over the last 6 years. We've grown this worldwide. However, my smallest platform that is completely dormant is YouTube. I only have 350 subscribers. I'd love to get that to 1,000 by the end of the year and continue to grow that because it's important to have the content on various platforms. So that's where I'm asking all you guys that are listening right now, if you could do me a favor. 1, leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. And 2, if you haven't done so, hit that subscribe button on YouTube and help me build this platform up that I sat here for 5 years before I tried to actually build it out. And so now I'm asking for your guys' help. Appreciate you all. As you guys heard in the introduction, this is a super unique interview for me. Just being able to have someone in this profession, this field of work, based on my own background of just being in this world, this culture for a portion of my youth. And now I get to talk to a guy who I actually remembered the name before I even came in contact with him for this show. I mean, that was 20 years ago, it seems. And I'm super, super excited to be bringing on Brandon Turner, professional skateboarder. Brandon, thanks for joining the show, man.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. It's game time. Guru, yeah.
Let's get it, man. So, Brandon, I'm going to put in the description here of the podcast this Forbes article that kind of talks about your story. But I would love to hear it from your mouth too. So that's why we're going to be doing this. You can read a lot of this. You guys can go to the description of the podcast, kind of check out his story on the Forbes side of things. But one of the things that stood out to me in that article was learning about how you became introduced to skateboarding. And it was actually over in Japan, coming from a military family. So can you maybe unbox that a little bit for us so that we can understand, how you even became introduced to the world of skating at such a young age? Because to my understanding, it was at a very young age.
Yes, it was at a super young age. I was born in San Diego, and at the age of 2, I got introduced to skateboarding through, a surfer who would skate by from school every day, from high school when I was 2, and I would just hear these sounds and would do anything I could to get outside and see what that sound was. And then when I seen him go by, I was intrigued. One day he put me on the front of the board and I was hooked. And I moved to Japan when I was 6. And mind you, there was no internet then. And I was going to a whole different world. And so getting immersed into the Japanese culture and going to school over there. And I didn't have my skateboard or anything and was playing sports. And then it was interesting for me because I really got hooked into skateboarding by finding a skateboard actually stealing it off of somebody's front lawn, but that was because I didn't have I didn't have a board and I was young and it was just laying in front of a front lawn and I grabbed it and I met my mentor in Japan, who's my brother now, by the name of Tom Hongo, and he started teaching me Japanese and immersing me in the Japanese culture. At the same time, the skateboarding culture from a Japanese perspective. So I was able to learn not just skateboarding, picking it up, and just it was unique for me because it was immersed into the Japanese way, like with honor and respect, and doing things like really, with intention and just respect, and with being like present. And so it was like a real learning curve for me. And the skateboarding was one aspect, but learning the culture at the same time was the real key, and that's what like changed a lot for me.
You know what's interesting about that is I'm listening to it, and we'll get into this more. Is just it's so interesting to hear the difference in cultures around any sport or anything in Japan compared to here. I once had a young man who played basketball. He's from Japan, but he's currently living in Idaho, where I reside, and he's playing high school basketball here. And we talked about that. I mean, he was a champion over there where he played, and then he came here for a more, a bigger opportunity to play at the next level. And we talked about the difference in culture, and it's wild. The word respect that you just used is also a word that he used, and it's just a weird. It wasn't like, oh, they're more, but they were respectful about the game. They were respectful about each other. They were respectful as a culture. It just seemed a lot different. Talk to us when did you come back to the United States? Wasn't it in your teens that you made the transition back over here? And then what was that transition like, going from that culture that you had been submersed into, learning the skating way, and then trying to transition over here and utilize that same thing?
Well, when I moved over there, it was a culture shock, anyways, because I was in a foreign country. I was super young. I didn't know the difference between Japan. I kept on saying China. They kept saying Japan. So once I learned Japanese and the culture and everything, then I didn't want to. When it was time to come back here, I was 12, about to turn 13, and I didn't want to come back here because we didn't have the internet and stuff. And so my parents used to get VHS. We used to have family in the US tape the news on VHS tapes and send it to us like every few weeks of the news so we could see what was going on over here. That's how my mom did it. And I would just see the news over here, and I was just like, somebody gets killed there every single day, and there's the riots and the LA riots and all this stuff. I was just like, I don't I'm not trying to go back there. That's crazy. That's a huge risk. Like, it was scary. So when I moved back to the US, it was a culture shock because everyone was like different. It was like didn't really have that culture of respect and honor, especially as like a 12, in middle school. Like, kids were kids were mean. It's like, you don't really have that nowadays. I've been seeing some things bring bullies back or whatever, but no, there was just like, we get in fights and people steal stuff from you. Like, I remember when I got my bike stolen. This was like a culture shock for me. I left my bike on the side of my house and it was gone, and I was so confused to try to remember. I'm like, I misplaced my bike. Where did I put my bike? Like, and I was looking for my bike, and I couldn't wrap my head around that it was stolen. I was like, I'm like, why would somebody, they borrowed it? I'm like, so when are they going to bring it back, and who was it? I didn't get that. So that was like a big like shock and a trauma for me. Like, oh wow, this is how it is. I was just like I couldn't understand how that happened. So
Yeah.
that's just an example of how different it is in Japan. You know, people would leave their keys in their car and doors open, and you didn't have to worry about any of that, and you were safe.
Yeah, man. As I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm like, dang, that even just the story of the bike, like it's actually really sad if we think about it now. Like, yeah, we have to lock everything up. You have to live in a world where you're scared about that stuff, and then you're trying to process that in your own head of like, wait, did they take it for themselves? They borrow that? Like, what? How did that work? That's crazy, man. You know, as a young teen, I'm sure like there's a lot that you're trying to go through. Um, in the Forbes article, it referenced something that I actually want to dissect with you as well, Brandon. Is you were a skater, and as a young African American male in the United States of America, there was this perception probably of like, or it seems that in the article it mentioned this of like people expected you to be like a football player or a mainstream sports guy. So how did you I guess deal with that? If there's other young men in the same situation that might be into skating or some non-traditional sports, so to speak, that have the stereotype that they should be doing this or should be doing that, I want to see if we can help them with any kind of advice that you have, because that's additional pressures that the general public probably doesn't see or experience for that matter.
Yeah, well, nowadays it's way more accepted. There's a lot of, you know, ethnic skateboarders all around the world now, and but me, when I was growing up, there's only few. I think I was probably the only African American skater in my school. Maybe there's one more, but it was you know, I would get, you know, from some family members and stuff like, why you skate? You know, that's a, that's, that's for white people or something like that. Like that's how it was then. People might not understand that now, but that's how it was. It was just like, why don't you play football? Why don't you play basketball? Like, what are you doing? And even from like girls at, when I even got into high school, they would just kind of like push me to the side or look at me weird and stuff until, I started getting in magazines and stuff. And then people started like kind of understanding and kind of showing me love and whatever, which I thought it was weird, but I was already over it by then because I've had so much like disrespect and just was judged for doing something that everybody wasn't doing. So it was a challenge for a while, but we pushed through, and that's what you know molded me into who I am today. And influencing even nowadays, that when even something isn't of the norm or whatever, just to believe in yourself and stay true to yourself, and everything will work out. And it doesn't matter what anybody thinks or anything, as long as you're not harming or hurting anyone, and you believe in something and that you're passionate about, to just push through and believe in yourself.
I freaking love that, man. I think that's super cool. When you were skating, though, here's the other thing. You know, nowadays we've got Instagram, YouTube, there's TikTok, there's all sorts of social media. There's access to the internet for everything as far as like how to learn how to play a sport. Here's some drills you do. When it came to skating, how did you learn how to skate a simple ollie, for example, or a kick flip? Like those simple tricks that you do as a skateboarder when you first get going. How did you even learn to do that? Did you just, I guess, was there information? Were there mentors? You had mentioned your mentor in Japan that kind of helped you out there too. But I'm just curious, how did you continue to learn and practice new things with I guess the lack of the information that was available at the time?
uh Progression, it was definitely. Am I there? Okay.
There you are. There you are. Yeah.
With progression, there was definitely nothing online. Sorry, I keep getting calls. I muted my calls, but whatever. Um, yeah, with progression, it was definitely nothing online. It was friends and relationships and organically meeting people, who were riding a skateboard. When I was pushing through the streets, making new friends and skating with people who were better than me and learning from them and where they're putting their footing, and kind of just that's how you learned. We didn't have a bunch of skate parks or anything. We had like just like regular parks, and it was all through relationships. And that's what the difference was with then. And people still have their crews and relationships and friendships, you know, all around. But nowadays with the internet and stuff, I feel like it kind of makes people more kind of antisocial and just like all just on their phones and whatever. And before, back in the days, you'd see a skater and be like, oh, hey, like, hey, how you doing? Meet me here tomorrow. We didn't even have a phone. You gotta, like, I had a pager, and some people didn't even have a pager. It'd be like, oh, meet me here at this time tomorrow. Like, and you had to like be there. You know what I mean? And if you weren't there, then you were like left, and then you would have to go off and try to find where your friends were. So it was just like, it was definitely, um it was different than nowadays. You just have like maps or whatever, you can get kind of wherever, but it was more of an adventure back then. And it's like when I travel overseas sometimes and my phone's not working or something, or no Wi-Fi, and I have to find out and navigate to where I'm going, it gives me that feeling that I had back in the day of not, most people wouldn't know what to do without their phone nowadays.
Totally.
So like that is actually like empowering to actually have to use your brain and navigate and remember uh things you've seen and directions and kind of being yourself. So yeah, it was amazing. Like that's how I learned, though. Basically, it wasn't just about learning about the skateboarding, it was everything integrated with the skateboarding, how to navigate to meet up with people, to make new friends, and all that without a phone.
That is so crazy to me. And the word you used was pager.
Yeah.
A pager. I want those people who are listening, especially the young athletes that I coach or even the parents,
Hmm.
remind them to listen to this. If you're a parent, your kid hasn't listened to this, come back and listen to what Brandon just said, a pager. Then go Google it. Yeah,
Yeah,
pagers were a thing. I think some people just don't realize what that was, but definitely
it's
pagers were a thing.
it's crazy. It's crazy that some kids don't know what a pager is. It's insane to me. But you used to have to call a number and page it, leave your number, and then you had a device that vibrates. You see the number, and then you have to go to a phone and call it, and hopefully they were still out that phone by the time you got to a phone to talk to your friend.
Dude, talk about very inefficient ways. It was like it's like a text message slash phone call slash everything to try to like, and then you had to have access to a phone. This is before cell phones were a thing. So
It was a
yeah,
text message for a phone number, and then you got to go find a phone. So
I, it's so awesome though to see how things have evolved. As you're talking about all that though, it's cool to see. You were able to adapt. I think that's such a benefit. And one of the things you mentioned was like you used your brain, and I don't mean that disrespectfully towards other people, but I've said it a lot myself. Like you had to actually use your brain. I think a lot of the times nowadays, kids don't know how to be social. They're very antisocial because, like you said, there's devices in front of their face from the time they're 3 years old, and they just get comfortable talking behind a device instead of having to actually communicate with one another. So you had this opportunity to build a community and continue to grow. Brandon, I want to know though, like you mentioned, there weren't many skate parks and whatnot, but at what point did you realize like, hey, skating can actually get me either paid or I can get into a mag? There's things that I can do. Like, at what point did that turn for you? What age were you when you realized like, hey, I can do this professionally and probably make a living if I can get connected with the right types of people? I just want to kind of know that because there's a lot of people who will say that, be like, well, skating's cool and all, but there's no way you can make a living out of it, or there's nothing that you can do to actually make money. So what's the point of putting your body in harm's way? So I want you to explain that, like dissect that when that actually happened for you.
well, I've always skated for the love of skating, and just because I loved I loved the culture and what I did. But it was my goal when I left from Japan was to be. I realized I was progressing fast, and I'm like, hey, when I get to the States, I will be a professional skateboarder. Like that was my goal, and it happened. But more importantly, it wasn't just about that. It's the freedom. It's not about, okay, making a living doing it, because to be honest, a lot of famous musicians, done music and worked a job before before they're ever making money doing a musician. It's just, I believe you have to make a living, and I believe that you should have a passion because it's important. And if it works out that you're so good at your passion that you can make money from it, then that's a plus. But I think where some people get into this place with their passion, when they just just focusing on one thing is great, and putting your all into it is good, but you kind of got to diversify because you have to make a living. And I think when you say, for skateboarding, for instance, you put all your time and work and just into skateboarding, and you have nothing else going on and it doesn't working out, then you develop a resentment to your passion. So then you lose that because it never worked out. And that can just be, some mental trauma to yourself that you created without setting yourself up right, and you had expectations. Because you just have to stay true to your path, and whatever works out is all for a reason. It's not if you were good enough or you didn't do this right or wrong. It's like everybody has their own story and journey, and you got to really just pay attention to where life is like pointing you and not resist.
I love that. Absolutely love that. Um, when I was younger and I was, skating, an inline skater, as we were talking about earlier,
Mhm.
one of the things that was tough for us was understanding how to even how do you even get into a magazine, so to speak, or get onto a skate video that they used to have, and all these things. There was like Thrasher, it was a magazine, and there's a lot of different. I mean, there was videos, and the thing is like everybody had their specialty. So this is what I wanted to ask. Like for me, I was always good at hitting handrails. I was brave enough to hit handrails, but I wasn't the most athletic guy. I'm 6'2", and back then I was kind of like I was the basketball player that skated. So I'd wear basketball shorts while I was skating. So I always got made fun of at the skate park, but
Yeah,
I'd hit all the handrails,
me
but I
too.
wasn't gonna.
Too.
Oh, really? Okay. So I was about to ask, so what was your specialty, so to speak? There's street skaters, there's vert skaters, there's all sorts of different specialties. But I wanted to kind of ask you, like, where did you specialize as you were making your climb up into the professional ranks?
It was street skateboarding and going big, jumping down stuff, and that's kind of like what I was known for. And yeah, I would wear basketball shorts because, like I told you, I played sports, and like the first videos I came out with, I have tricks in basketball shorts, and I didn't care about no one really even said anything to me about that because that was just part of who I was. So it's yeah, it was it's interesting, but I know what you mean about that. Like everyone has their specialty, but I want to say one thing, like everyone in sports or anything always thinks about how good they are. And I just want to state that nothing in this world is about what you know, it's about who you know and the attitude you bring with it. Because I've known plenty of people who are the best, but they would have a shitty attitude or not have the right connections, and they don't make it because of that. So it's all about connection, and it's not what you know, it's about who you know and your ability to make relationships. And I'm sure you know that, and that's in sports or anything, and it's being at the right place or the right time. So I would try to encourage people to connect more in an organic way and just talk to people.
Ooh, that is huge. That's going to be a snippet for social media. I promise you that. That was huge, Brandon.
Mhm.
Um, I do have a question. So as you were moving forward and continuing on skating and you're improving and whatnot, where did you travel? Like, did you get to go travel to some locations? I mean, you mentioned there weren't a ton of skate parks, but you were skating around. Did you start going around the United States, start traveling the world? Like, talk to us about that as things started to progress for you.
Well, things happened really fast for me because I was super determined and I had the right relationships, the right connections right away when I moved back from Japan with my boy Peter Smolik, Ken Russell, who was, you know, the biggest, one of the biggest pro skateboarders, in the world. And when I got back from Japan, I was skating with Peter Smolik, who was up and coming, arguably one of the best skaters in the world, and still to this day. And Ken Russell was already established. I met Ken Russell went to a spot with him and kind of showcased what I could do, and it was off and running from then. And we started traveling the United States right away. Within like a year, I got put on a new starting company, Shorty Skateboards, which was the biggest company for years and one of the best companies ever in skateboarding. And yeah, I traveled everywhere, all around the world. Went back to Japan every year. You know, stayed connected with my family and my mentor in Japan because I got unofficially adopted with my Japanese family, and then and just over in Europe and just everywhere. I was always on a plane, always on the road, everywhere, like being immersed in different cultures and meeting new friends and different people. So it was amazing. You know, it's been amazing, and I'm still doing that this day, and blessed to be doing so.
So awesome, man. What was your favorite place to visit? Like, where is your favorite place you have ever skated at, and why?
Um, I mean, I love Japan, so I would have to put that first. But skating wise, like definitely Barcelona, Spain is amazing, and in the UK, just because of just the structures and how older it is compared to America, and the buildings and the culture and the people being about the people, and it's just I would have to say that definitely Barcelona.
So dope. So shout out to my boy AJ from EBC. He's one of my best friends. Currently, he's from Idaho, or he lives in Idaho where I do, but he's currently in Europe right now for 3 months, just traveling with his family, enjoying his time there. And he was talking about literally just yesterday. I was chatting with him about Barcelona, Spain. He was talking about how he just
Yeah,
loves it there, from the people and everything. The structures, the architecture, everything's great. So when you said that, that's from a skating perspective, but also like, I got to shout out AJ because it reminded me of him. That's so cool, man. You know, the other part of this, Brandon, is I just want to talk about, the culture within skating. Obviously, people are listening to this, and if they don't know your story yet, it sounds like, oh man, like he came over to the United States after living in Japan, had a great time in Japan, comes over to the United States. He went through some adversity, went up the ranks. He's traveled. Everything's, dandy. But there were
yeah,
some difficulties that you struggle with in the meantime, right? So that's where I kind of want to show people that yes, Brandon is extremely successful. I would call that a very successful career that is continuing on, as you said, still to this day. However, you have faced adversity and you have overcome some very hard struggles. So that's kind of the tough part of the discussion that I want to unpack a little bit, so people see that there are struggles that happen in between. And, there
uh,
were things to do with substance abuse and so forth. So do you mind talking about that a little bit and talking to us about, being immersed in that culture of skating, the people you were around, and yes, you liked them as friends and such, but like what the other pressures and the other struggles that came from that were?
yeah, definitely the struggle is real. Obviously, like I said, everybody has a story and it deserves to be told, and that's why I opened up West Side Recovery, and it's a substance abuse facility here in San Diego, rehab, if you would say. But removing the stigma of getting help is a weakness, and that rehab is jail. So I wanted to bring my perspective into starting a program that was cool. But getting to that and how it came to that is, everybody has a story and it deserves to be told. And I did have struggles. I had trauma as a kid and family issues, and I had a good outlet, which was skateboarding, and that's why I had no fear, because I had so much pain and struggles when I was little. I changed that energy into skateboarding, so it progressed fast and everything. But I didn't realize that then. So I had this amazing outlet. By the time I got to where I wanted to get, being a professional and everything, and I got into drinking and partying and traveling the world, and I'm in Europe, Europe at 18. There's no drinking age, and I'm partying with my my friends, and through high school, and not thinking anything of it. And I started getting in trouble. Started getting DUIs, and started you know just having run-ins with the law. At 18, got my first DUI, and got another one, and then not thinking anything of it, just thinking it was circumstantial. But got into, experimenting with drugs and sold drugs a little bit. And eventually, long story short, these things building up ended up later on going to prison. And then I'm just sitting there thinking, like, how did I get here? Like, I have all these things going for me and everything's great. And how did I get here? And, got done with that, and eventually ended up getting some help and seeing what was going on with me, and realized that I had the reason why I was using, like, drinking so much and trying to get out of my own head by whatever, just smoking a bunch of weed and drinking, is like because I didn't know how to deal with life on life's terms. And I had some underlying issues I never addressed from when I was younger. So I had to have somebody help me and had so, to have somebody help me and take me through this process of being able to learn how to take my own inventory, how to go through my old traumas and address that, and put it down on paper, and basically the 12 steps of AA, and it's it was really eye opening to realize that I thought I was just having fun and doing this because my friends did or whatever, but really I was just self medicating, and had so many stigmas towards getting help or mental health. Oh, I don't have a problem, and getting help is weakness and stuff. So it was definitely a deep hole to climb out of, and it was I didn't even realize I was there. It just happened over time, and it helped. Happened in pieces through events, and it was just really crazy. And so I wanted to open up a facility to where I can help people that kind of had the same mindset as I had, ambitious and a go-getter and everything, super talented, of course, for everybody. But I really was hard-headed in the sense that I didn't think I needed help from anybody. I thought I was doing everything myself, and it was just circumstantial. If I would have done this different, or this, if this didn't happen, if my mom didn't do this, this wouldn't happen. But the thing of it is it's me, and I had to address those issues, and I didn't have the tools to address them. I was just doing it by self-medicating, smoking a bunch of weed, or whatever. I really couldn't be with myself from within. So I wanted to help do my part in sharing my story and to help change the world and the stigma that getting help is weakness. Because I'm going to tell you something, no matter what you do in this world, whether it's sports, have a business, or have a job or anything, everybody needs help, no matter what. And it's not about if you have a problem or not. I mean, we all have problems and life's hard. And that's why I say connection's so important, because usually when you're going through a problem, you think you're the only one going through it. And, oh, nobody's going through what I'm going through. And that's just not the truth. And you won't realize that until you like reach out and see that there's more similarities than differences. It's easy to see the differences between me and you are people, but when you start to look at the similarities, then you have some clarity.
That's so powerful, man. I'm like listening to the story. I'm trying to unpack it in my own mind of like trying to put myself in your position. You know, would you say, Brandon, like in your story, if you like look at it so far in life, that the prison sentence, like going to prison, do you feel like that actually like was the turning point for you of like, okay, it's time to change my life around? Because there's a lot of people I've known that have gone to prison for one reason or the other. Some of them feel like it's helped them because they had the right mindset to change when they got out, and some of them feel like it actually made it worse. But do you feel like that was like okay, I've got to make some changes, or this isn't the right path I got to be going down?
Well, yeah, the idea was definitely planted that I needed to make some changes, and I knew I never wanted to go there again because it was horrible. But you got to realize it's a system, and if you're whatever system you're in, like it's a powerful one, and if you don't have the tools or use the resources to see what is going on, and not integrate that into yourself, or blame or think it's something other than yourself, then you can have a problem, because you see some people who go to jail or go to prison, and then they're just in and out and in and out, because it's usually because there's an underlying mental health problem, and they keep reverting back to drugs or whatever, and not realizing that they're the system doesn't recognize that they're self-medicating, but they just haven't got the right help, or have had the right resources or guidance to get up out of that. So it's really tricky, and I could see that too. I could see it. I'm like, oh, I could see how this could be like a cycle, because then you start getting resentful to yourself. I can't believe this happened to me, and this, and then all the other stuff, and then it's just me, oh, this person did this to me, and I just want to tell everyone, when you're thinking about I or me a lot, you're living in the ego, and you gotta get out of yourself and reach out and talk to somebody else.
Yo, I love this, man. So many golden nuggets here. So dope. So, Brandon, was there ever a point, maybe this was the point in your life, that you said, okay, well, maybe my skateboarding career is over? Like, was that ever a thought that processed through your head when you were going through your struggles there?
Oh, never. I was my mind was strong in that sense. I'm just like, I need to stay healthy, keep my mind right. I'm going to use this time as school. I'm going to study, read books, and get, up on my game with some of the other things I don't know. Like, I'm like, I have this time, I'm going to use it as like I'm in college. So I kind of just studied and just got immersed into just learning. So by the time I was out of there, I was like, okay, I was like on a different level from when I went in. So I chose to take something out of it instead of it taking something from me.
Ooh, I love that. That right there, again, I think that's so inspiring. I mean, I've never had to experience that, but I like to hear it from the people. Like, I can feel it when you're sharing that. Like, just the idea of being there and making the best, if you can call it that, out of the situation. Awesome, man. As we get towards the end of the interview, I do this segment called the Game Time Grind. I'll just do a couple rapid fire questions your way, based on some of the things that I was researching, and I just kind of want to let the listeners know more about your skateboarding career. So, one, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater video game, big popular video game growing up. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, there was a million different games, and I mean, every one of us played it, whether we were skaters or not. Like, everybody wanted to play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Yeah.
Which one was your favorite game, and why?
It was number 2, and it was just because it was an upgrade from number 1, but it was right when you're starting to be able to do like the long grinds and tricks and whatever, and it wasn't too technical, but it was right there in the middle between being basic and the learning curve, and just too technical, and it was just kind of like still kind of generic. So
Dude, I totally get it though. When you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, I totally understand that. Man, I love the long grinds though, and the bonuses you get for it and everything. Like, oh, so sick. Who was your favorite skater to play with on the video game?
I played with my boy Chad Muska. That's who put me on. That's who I was on shorties with. So when he got up on that game, we're super excited for him, and I felt a part of it. And I think people told me I was a special character at some point, but I don't know. I don't know. So, but yeah, Chad Muska.
Let's go. Shout out Chad. Let's go. From a shoe perspective, skate shoes are all over the place. There's, DCs. There's tons of different shoes, right? Like, basketball shoes the same way. We got Jordans. We got everything. What was your favorite shoe? And I know I already kind of know this answer, but I want to know, what was your favorite shoe and why?
You know the answer. Well, I'm gonna just have to say that,
Maybe I don't.
from that's a hard one. From these Jason Lee Airwalks were my favorite growing up, and then I'm gonna have to say my shoe, the Brandon Turner that I had for Osiris, because it was my shoe. I put a lot of thought and hard work into the design, and that's what it was. And of course, my boy Peter Smolik shoe, from Osiris as well. It was a groundbreaking, changing, like amazing shoe that hasn't been done. He had the pant that went with it. It was called the Sag No Drag, and he had the Velcro on the back of the shoe so your pants wouldn't drag. Like it was just uh it was just next level.
That's so wild. So to piggyback off of that, from a business perspective, a lot of fans kind of want to know, like, how do these guys get paid? Is it sponsorships somewhere? You got magazines, you have videos you're doing big tricks on certain things, shoe deals and whatnot. You don't have to give specifics, obviously that's your own business, but
No,
are there deals for shoe deals, like when like a basketball player gets a kickback for their shoe deal?
no, absolutely. So you got salaries from all your companies. You got royalties from all your companies from signature items. You have incentives from um like magazines and clothing or all that, and then you have your royalties.
Freaking awesome, dude.
Yeah,
um, as you've gotten older and you're continuing into the sport, um, your body has stayed intact. I'm sure you've gone through injuries, as a lot of skateboarders have, ankles, legs, back, whatever. There's probably a ton of injuries as you continue to like try new things, but
absolutely.
you have taken care of your body. I know Pilates is a huge part of that, but can you explain to the listeners how you continue to execute and compete at a high level as you continue to get older and older?
I had to make some changes, just with what you put in your body, with what you eat, alkalining your body. And I'm vegan now, and I'm just gonna say, like, I loved meat and all that, but for integrity purposes and just with my studies and what I've, all the research I've done and information out there, I've decided to go vegan, and that's totally changed my energy, my body, and just made me on a next level performance wise. And then obviously stretching, working out, Pilates is just next level. And speaking of stigmas, when Pilates was first brought to my attention, I was just like, "Oh, get out of here! Like this is for you know, this is for women or whatever, and not to even be like that, but that's just what I thought,
No, for real.
because that's what I seen. But it is next level, and yeah, just being into making sure you eat right, sleep well, make sure to stretch, and really invest in yourself.
So awesome, man. See, it applies to skating the way it applies to any sport. Like, you've got to take care of your body. I think that's so dope. And everyone's got to get rid of those like stigmas, yoga, Pilates, those things. There's a big reason you're starting to see more and more like high level athletes doing those things. So just take note of that. If you guys are listening to this podcast, take note. Take note. You want to model after the people who've been successful. Brandon is successful. You might want to take note of that. Just 2 questions left for you, Brandon.
All right.
One of which is your switch hard flip. 2020, I believe, is when it happened. Huge trick. Talk to us about that trick. You landed it. And the biggest piece of this story for me, I would encourage people to go check the YouTube. There's tons of clips about this over and over and over. But it's that you did it at an age, I think you're late 30s, 39, 40 almost when you hit it.
Mhm.
And people are going to be like, okay, because that's a big piece of this story. So I just want to hear it from your side, like how long it took you to land that trick and why it was such an important feat.
Well, it's like one of the biggest like monuments in skateboarding, and there's only been a handful of tricks that's been done down this obstacle, and it's like the most known uh street spot in skateboarding. So since I was 18, I've been wanting to do this trick, and for 20 years nobody has done it still. And people, like, I remember, were like kind of doubting me, like, oh, well, hey, we know you could have done it, you know what I mean? And just kind of like didn't know if I could do it. And then I went and did it, and people were just like so blown away, because I want to tell everyone too. Everyone thinks that everyone has like an age timeline, and especially with basketball or football, like they wear down your body so much that you are just like you're done by that, age of 30 or your prime or whatever. But I'm going to tell you right now, like my prime when I was 18, I'm better than I was then at 41. So, and that's because of everything I've implemented into my life, like meditation, yoga, Pilates, eating different and everything. So my me doing that was kind of to prove a point that like you can do anything that you put your mind to, and don't everything starts in your mind with the idea. Everything in this world started with an idea, with, hey, how could we do this? It's not if I can, it's like, how could I do this? And if you can put your mind to it, you can really do anything. And I've showed that because people were just like blown away and thought it was impossible at my age. But it's, if you really put the work in and make changes and don't listen to things that other people say or anybody, you can really do anything at any age, because you are the master of your desires.
So freaking cool, man. So awesome. I'm going to put the link here, as you guys can see, of one of the YouTube videos to show Brandon's trick that he's talking about here, the switch hard flip. It's pretty dope. And now that you have the context of what you just said behind it, makes it a little bit more special. Last question for you. What's the biggest life lesson that you have taken away from skating thus far?
Biggest life lesson I've taken from skating. Skating is like life. Some people are scared of life and some people are scared of skating because they're scared to fall or fail. But skating is one of the best lessons in life, because it's not if you're going to fall, it's when you're going to fall. And it's not about actually falling, it's what you learn when you pick yourself back up. And as long as you pick yourself back up, you will progress in life or in skating.
Absolutely love it, man. Thank you for that. And, I just want to say thanks, Brandon, for joining me, taking the time out of your schedule to talk on the podcast, share your story. I just want to let everybody know, like, where they can, if they want to take advantage of your resources that you have at your clinic, how can they do that? If I have listeners that are in Southern California, for example, that are nearby, is there a website we can go to, or any social media, phone number, anything like that?
Yes, absolutely. My social media is B Turner, BTURNER_, and my company is Westside Recovery. It's Westside Recovery SD, like San Diego.com. And we have amazing programs: skateboarding program, yoga, Pilates, surfing, art program, music program, and just a real diverse way to recovery and helping you get back to your true self. So I appreciate you for having me, and everybody who's listening. And I hope everybody who's able to take something from this on the Game Time Guru podcast. Ciao.
Let's get it. I appreciate you, Brandon. For all those listening, check the description. We'll have the website there that Brandon just mentioned. Take advantage of his resources that he's got there for you. And as always, we'll be coming to you guys next week with another interview.
Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review, it would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.